Okay, well, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Looks like we have some additional members of the public on today, which is great. Looking forward to diving in. So let's call the meeting to order. Do we have an approval of the previous minutes or any proposed amendments to the previous minutes?
I have no changes.
No changes. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the previous minutes? Or I guess if we have no proposed changes, they're just approved, right? That's what we talked about? I think so.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So thank you. Minutes are approved, so we can jump right into the agenda items. Oh, Dean, are you motioning or that's just your hand?
No. I'm just
Okay.
trying to, my computer's acting strange too.
Okay, yep, that happens to all of us. Okay. Okay, so public comments. Does anyone have any public comments?
Yes, Robert Owen.
Okay, I see Kevin got his hand up just right like a half second before you did. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna have him go first.
All right, I beat you, Bob. Let me drop my hand when I'm thinking about it. Congratulations on the LEED Gold status, and my thanks to Kelly for providing extra information on the certification. I've shared this information with a student at UW who is interning with our 350 Wisconsin Middleton Climate Working Group. He's already fairly deep into the details regarding the city budget, Resolution 2018-32, the comprehensive plan, IRA funding sources, climate aspects of DEI, and I should say DEI aspects of climate, and now the LEED certification. He might be an excellent summer intern if you're looking for one. As for the SPP implementation plan, I'll make just two primary points. The process that is outlined is rather complex and may be construed as too time-consuming. Perhaps a flowchart decision tree with clickable links would make it easier to use, at least simpler, and if that can be arranged. Also, Robert Owen and I have made separate recommendations to the city that it find one or more experts to help make informed decisions regarding greener equipment choices, whether it's a hybrid HVAC system for the senior center or the latest clean truck options. The city is short-staffed and lacks this expertise. The idea seems to have appealed to Lisa Hanairo. I want the committee to know that this past summer I was put in touch with a member of the MHS Green Team, Amelia Burgess, as she became particularly dismayed when her air quality was severely affected by the Canadian wildfires thousands of miles away. Amelia, a resident of the town of Cross Plains, was seeking a productive use of her summer break. Together, Amelia and I decided to research the climate measures taken by the school district, which apparently passed a sustainability resolution in 2021 at the instigation of Daphne Wu and others, although it's not 100% clear it was approved due to the pandemic interruptions. This resolution focuses on renewable energy, waste reduction, sustainability, education, and communication. It unfortunately omitted any mention of addressing climate change and reducing district emissions. So we contacted the CPASD Superintendent, Dana Minogue, met with Assistant Superintendent for Operations, Jared Rossing, to discuss district climate initiatives, and since then have met individually with 3 board members and intend to address the entire board yet this month to encourage more aggressive measures. In the meantime, the district has been awaiting a consultant's report regarding how to proceed. There are opportunities for synergy between the city and the district, which I think Kelly is aware of. I also want to mention there is an all-electric, no-emissions landscaping company in this area called Green Mowers Madison, which also does snow removal. This was recently brought to the attention of 4 city departments that contract for such services with companies that have all or mostly fossil fuel using equipment, which is very noisy, unhealthy, and terrible for the planet and doesn't help us meet our climate goals. Finally, we all need to keep holding city staff accountable to the ideals that and plans going back to the 2016 referendum to establish our climate objectives. As mayors, alders, and city staff come and go, the replacements need to be educated and frequently reminded of our collective objectives. Accordingly, adhering to the SPP is likely the most effective measure the city can take to address climate change and needs to be implemented as soon as possible. Thanks for letting me address the committee.
Thank you. Bob.
Thank you. My name is Robert Owen, 1311 Middleton Street. I'd like to express my appreciation to the efforts of the people who contributed to the draft Sustainable Purchasing Policy Implementation section. Writing such a draft is challenging. It's impressive that this one was done mostly by volunteers. That said, I see at least two really serious omissions from the draft. First, it lacks any implementation provisions relating to energy equipment in city buildings. Most city buildings have natural gas for space and water heat and some for cooking. These release CO2 directly and CH4 indirectly in the process. To comply with Resolution 2018-32, we must get all natural gas and natural gas appliances out of city buildings by 2040. We should just ban new or replacement natural gas appliances in city buildings in the new SPP. We can replace them with heat pumps and electric cooking appliances. The city gas plant must be in the draft. Second, the draft does not provide for quantitative annual reporting of energy use and achievement of adopted city milestones by departments. By failing to require reporting, the draft undercuts efforts to hold underachieving departments and managers accountable and speed decarbonization of city operations. The omission must be addressed in a revised draft. Getting the carbon out is the essence of what 81% of Middleton voters like me voted for 7 years ago. We'd like to see how we're doing each year. Kelly can get LTE help from a UW student to do the data processing. On the other hand, I think the draft is too long in several respects. It's too prescriptive in telling city staff how to research and document cleaner options for new equipment. It requires too many life cycle cost analysis. It conveys distrust of the staff. It should be shortened, tempered, and simplified to reduce the bureaucratic effort and staff time needed to comply while still continuing to require strong justification of fossil fuels equipment purchases. The draft procedure is too much for a city of Middleton's size and employee resources, with a staff which does now appear to be slowly turning around. I think that the draft provisions relating to paper, office equipment, and supplies are also too long. I think the airport should be covered in some fashion. For example, A, requiring the FBO aircraft charging equipment, B, requiring electrification of hangars, C, and the alternative requiring hangar participation in geothermal or seasonal renewable energy heat storage projects, D, favorable aircraft lease and corresponding ground lease terms for electric and hydrogen fueled aircraft. We should address all of these issues and have a better draft in time for the November meeting. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. So I would like to, any other public comments? I don't see any here. Before we move on to the staff report, I would just like to formally welcome our new alder on this committee, Alder Schaefer. Thank you so much for joining. We are so excited to have you tonight.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I missed other meetings. I had a whole summer of planned trips before I got elected.
Oh, yes.
And I couldn't undo them. So now I'm here. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Well,
Well,
you know, I just gave you a quick email that, you know, we're a fun group. Well, we like to think we're fun, you know, and we're doing great things, but would you mind just introducing yourself? Tell us, you know, a little bit about you. You're not in my personal district, so I don't know much about you. So, you know, fill us in, and if you don't mind, give us just a quick summary on what you're thinking about sustainability, kind of
well, Yeah, thank you. I'll make it quick. I've been a resident since 1988 in District 1. My family and my wife and I have a landmark home in Middleton on the corner of Middleton and South Avenue, which we put 30 years of love into doing this house. And I've been very passionately involved, and my wife and everything that goes on, particularly District 1, with trying to preserve some sense of individuality to the various districts of the city. When I ran, that was part of the point, is that we know we grow, we know we add things, but the whole city's just not one and the same. And we have to recognize that every single thing we do is the government's going to affect somebody, and we have to look closely at those somebodies that get affected and how it fits with their neighborhood. Been a hardcore fan of environmentalism all my life and seeing the environment, and so I'm happy to be on this committee. I spent 30 some years on the faculty at the University of Wisconsin, retired. I'm now driving school buses for kids because I love kids too. And I'm happy to be on board with this thing. I should let you know I have been invited, and I'm attending at the end of October, Sustainability Leaders Conference put on. That's going to take place over in McFarland. So I'm trying to jump on board, and feel free to contact me, any of you, at any time if you have questions, concerns, or issues. I'm there and I'm on your side.
Thank you so much. May I quickly ask what your background is, or what you were working as, your specialty at UW?
I was a music theorist, a jazz bass player, etc. I was the dean of the school for 15 years. I raised the first $21 million for our new concert halls that we have downtown. Contemporary music, popular music, every kind of music, as long as it's well done. But personally, I'm a jazz bass player, and hope to see me around playing somewhere. So.
Wow, well, that's great. That new Hamilton Music Center is gorgeous.
Yeah,
By the way, my daughter played in there with the Wisconsin Youth Symphony Orchestra. So anyway,
Okay.
any other people? Yeah, Dick, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, are you in that cool house up on the top of the hill of South and
No, I'm next to that house. At the top of the hill is John Myers, the owner of Badger Bus. We're on the corner. It's a greenish Victorian house, sits on the corner. We have a greenhouse hanging over our driveway into an underground garage off of South Avenue.
So if you come on South Avenue heading west, are you on the right or?
We're on the right side. So if you come west on South Avenue and you're going to turn onto Middleton Street,
Yeah,
to go into downtown, we're
Yeah.
literally that house right on the corner.
yeah. Well, I watched that house being renovated. I was always intrigued by it, whoever was doing it, and now I know who did it.
Yeah, well, come by sometime and see it, and see the yards. My wife's a master gardener and also a musician, and so there's not much lawn, but there's beautiful gardens. So anybody come by anytime you want, and
Wow.
I'm happy to show you around. So
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe
good.
we'll have our party there pretty soon.
That's what I'm
we
thinking.
could. We got a big enough yard, but a little cold, you know. It's actually a good party house inside if you want to have a party too.
Nice, fun. Okay, well, thank you so much. Welcome.
You're welcome.
Anybody
Well,
else
thank you.
have any questions, or I guess without going around in the group, because we've done that before and it's kind of taken too
Yeah.
long, partly because of my rambling, but I'll just, we have a nice group here of like different specialists. We have some water people. We have Kelly, who is absolutely amazing, works tirelessly for this. We have someone from the Middleton High School Green Team, Shreya. Just raise your hand, Shreya. She's excellent. She's newer, someone from Pheasant Branch Conservancy. We have, we have Laura, who is just spectacular at pretty much whatever she does. We have Dean and Tony, who are newer, but are already contributing in such great ways. And then a few people who couldn't make it tonight, but anyway, great group we have here.
Thank you. Well, I'm here to learn, so I won't say a whole lot, although I have a few things tonight I'm going to talk about, but I'm
Perfect.
here to learn and see what you're all doing and find out, I think as a leader, my job is to lead, not come in with strong opinions and try to bully my way into something, but to listen to what people have to say.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. On that note, let's dive into the staff report. If anyone from Kelly's staff report, if anyone has questions, comments that Kelly can address. Speak up. I don't see any hands, so speak up if you have something. Otherwise, we can dive into the Purchasing plan. Well, first of all, Kelly, I mean, I think it goes without saying, and I know we've talked, but congratulations on the lead. That was just such a huge
Mhm.
recognition. And you, people can say it was a team effort. Really, it was 98% Kelly, I believe, maybe 2% other people. So, yes, team, but Kelly. So well done. Yes, okay. So I think I'm not seeing any other discourse. We can jump into the sustainable purchasing policy implementation plan. I would first like to thank so much, Dean, for diving into this. So, we have tossed this around. We got really a lot of input from people in the community, from the committee. Oh, Laura, I'm sorry. Do you have something on the purchasing plan or Kelly's staff report?
The purchasing plan.
Okay.
So I was just,
Okay, you're
Yeah.
up next. So we had just a lot of and Lisa Hanairo, the previous alder who was on our committee, sustainability committee, she really did the first draft of this. However, it really needed some, where it was just a draft, it needed some work since then. And so we've had input. Dean kindly and wonderfully took this on to just what Dean did was took a whole bunch of, I don't know how many email forwards you had from me, Dean, to try to incorporate into this. It's a job. It was a job to do what Dean just did. And so in a sense, it makes sense. It's, some of the feedback I've heard is it's a lot. And yes, it is. And so what's great is that it seems to me like it's all in here and we can go from here. So Laura.
okay. I just kind of wanted to get us.
Do you want to go? Sorry to cut you off, Laura. Dean, since it was your draft, do you want to give a comment at the beginning, or do you mind?
Yeah, I'd like to say a few words
Okay. Do
about
you mind, Laura, if he goes first, quick?
just where
Okay.
we're at with this point, because I don't consider this a finished document. And actually, I'd handed it over to Christy and Kelly last week, but it hasn't gone much from where I was. So there's some things I want to point out that need help. First of all, thanks to Christy for providing me with the opportunity to be of use to the committee and to the city, and for Christy and Kelly's help in reviewing and editing it to the condition it is in now, which I would say has, potentially ready for internal staff review after we handle comments that were already made tonight and more comments. But I guess that is the step we would be going to next. Ideas behind my efforts on this. So it's built on ideas by Lisa Nairo and later Laurie Buckles. And Lisa really attempted to repeat much of the rationale, the overall goals for sustainability, the rationale for sustainability, who is responsible for this document, and for this whole process. And as I thought about this, I thought all of those things had already been spelled out in the referendum resolution, the SPP, and other documents that the city has already accepted, that voters have approved by 81%, that the council has passed resolutions unanimously on multiple occasions saying that this is what we want to do. What they hadn't done was write down, how do you do this? And so the intro is basically saying, this is the how-to document. We know who needs to do it. We know what we need to achieve. We've already assigned that we got to get to this point at 2040. So we know when. We got to know how. And so on that point, I agree with Kevin, who Spittler, who commented in a public comment and suggested a flow chart. Great idea. But I also want to say that the idea that we know that all the staff already know how to do this isn't backed up by the simple statements in this year's budget documents where it just says no alternative available without any documentation of what you looked at to make that determination. And so we really do need to start with making sure that people do the due diligence that one needs to do the search. So there's two basic sections to the how-to document. Steps, the first one is, what are the steps? There's steps 1 through 5. The director and the his or her designated employee who's going to take on the job of wrangling the procurement process for their department need to sit down and say, what are the tasks we do, and what equipment do we need to do it? And we might need replacement equipment, or there might have been a breakthrough in our area such that there's a whole new set of equipment you could use. And you might need to throw out the old and get the new, because things may have changed. And things are happening like that in technology these days. Step 2, the employee designee goes out and does the search. Step 3, they get back together, say, these are the ones we really think we ought to go a deep dive on. Step 4, go ahead on the deep dive group, which should be a small group where you actually do things like life cycle cost analysis. You don't do them on every single possibility. And then step 5 is writing down what you did and why you made the decisions you did. And to also make sure at that point you've taken into account that, for example, you don't buy in the year 2024, a piece of equipment that has that has an internal combustion engine and a 20-year lifespan. Because we've already said by 2040, we're going to be absolutely net zero. So you might want to make a lease for 10 years if there's nothing on the horizon, or for 5 years, or something you can negotiate with the vendor for this piece of equipment, but you don't want to be running an internal combustion engine on a large piece of equipment in 2040 when you're going to be at net zero. So there's some specific ideas about how you make your final decisions. The second part, so those are the steps. The second part is specific information that you need to know about different types of equipment, vehicles, and supplies that people request every year. And Bob pointed out, I pointed out at the end of this draft, sort of apologetically, that we hadn't really reached full completion of this on 2 big areas, construction materials and the issue of so-called green concrete, and airport function. And then Bob brought up indoors natural gas use and the like. I think those are all things that need to be discussed further in this. And one of the things we need to put in this draft, probably more than it is, although it is in one of the final paragraphs, is that this thing is going to change. We are in a time of high change. You know, if 5 years from now somebody makes a breakthrough on the use of hydrogen for generating electricity, what the hell? Lots of this will be both much easier than we thought and much, much different in making comparisons. We don't know that, but things will, hopefully, a variety of breakthroughs will happen in the next 18 years when we reach 2040. The final thing I did was that, final thing I forgot to do is that we need to put in some training as this goes out. And then the other thing I did do is Lisa's document attempted to put 2 really big ideas together: sustainability and diversity and equity. And I'm big for both of those concepts being spread throughout city government functioning. But when you look at sustainability and climate change and environmental issues, they have some fairly objective standards. Carbon emissions, pollutant concentration, effects of those on health and longevity, etc. And I could actually make another scale for the effects of health and longevity on bad policies and behavior related to diversity and equity. But I don't think I could add those two scales together. And I think if we put those two scales out there, all commingled in one document, it'll become A, much easier to attack, B, even harder to read than my document currently is, and C, easily argued that it's a laundry list of things liberals would like to see happen. And it shouldn't be taken seriously, frankly. I think that's a mistake. I think we need a diversity and equity plan. We can easily do that. That's not that hard. Putting them together is really hard and could cause problems for each of them. By the way, I took all of the things related to diversity and equity out, except for one. There's still one place in the on the first page or in the first section that has diversity and equity issues mentioned. So another place for proof. So that's where we are. Obviously, there's still a few miles to go before we sleep, but that is what I wanted to say about the process. So
Thank you. That's so helpful, Dean. Great. I mean, Dean put a lot of time and work to get this where it is now. So Laura, you have the floor for as long as you'd like.
Okay, thanks. So I think Dean actually covered a lot of things. And I think one thing that just through the emails that we were sharing and the public comments, we all agree this thing is just too long. It's just too big. So we don't need to kind of litigate that. One thing that I kind of propose is chopping it up into a series of much smaller document / sections, meaning, you could have the steps, 1 through 5. This is what we need to do. And then that whole specific info, each one of those could be chopped down by its area and made an appendix for. So, when they're talking about construction, that's its own little document. When you're talking about they wanted to add the airport, that's its own little document. When you're talking about purchasing paper goods, that's its own little, appendix. You can stitch them all together, but then that way the staff can just go to what really matters to them. What happened here, because I was, with Lisa when we started writing this, I asked her, who is the focus of this document for? And she's like, well, I want to make it so that if a citizen reads it, they understand why we're doing what we're doing. And then I also want to make it work for the staff. And those two things are difficult. As Dean just mentioned, we had, a lot of stuff in there explaining the rationale, the goals, the, why, stuff like that, which, if you kind of cut that out and just focus it down to this is strictly implementation for the staff to get it done, you would eliminate a lot of that. And then we could even do little, like I said, sidebars that say, okay, here's the goal, we got to get to this by 2040. You could put that in the section that has to do where it might affect the people making those type of purchases that don't make a 20-year purchase of a, combustible engine, because we got to be all electric. So basically I propose cutting this thing way down to make it manageable. And the way to do that while also adding new stuff in is maybe a much shorter original document with, you know, 7 different appendix or however you want to do it, tying it together.
Yeah.
So that,
I
I mean,
love,
that
I love
was,
that idea. That was what I was gonna do. And then I got leery about, you know, I don't know how many different people had contributed to it beforehand, and I didn't have time to figure out who valued how much, which stuff how much. So I left it in the document, but I think the appendix, so that people can just go to the appendix. Hey, that's what I'm looking at.
yeah,
That would
we
be
might
great.
want to just, yeah, this might have to just be, all right, you know, once we all kind of agree on a structure, you know, 3 or 4 of us get in there and just hack away, like in a room saying, okay, this is redundant. Let's get rid of that. Put this in appendix A, B, C, D. And so that the first overview is easy for them to understand what they're supposed to do. Part 1, here are the steps. And then here's your separate section department. And then if you did get to training, you'd almost do it by the appendixes so that, you know, someone could help people, you know, dealing with the construction, things like that. So that's kind of my big overarching thought of how to move this thing forward and make it manageable while also trying to incorporate the comments that have come up that we need to add more to a document we need to, you know, cut in half. So let Dick go.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Laura. Dick, you're up. I think you might be on mute.
You're
Dick.
You're
muted,
muted,
Dick.
Dick.
Sorry about that. These are all really good comments, Laura, and I really like your suggestions on this. And Dean and others, thank you for all the hard work on this. I have to say that the document that I reviewed even this afternoon did not look as clean as this document. So this got updated somehow on the website. So I saw one with a lot of chicken scratch and comments on the side. I didn't back up to the top again, please. I didn't see, I saw it as the SPP-IP, and I could not figure out what IP was. So I was going under the assumption that this was a sustainable purchasing policy. And Bob Owen emailed me yesterday and asked me what my comments were on it. And I have to say, it felt like a list of procedures for how to implement this thing, but that I thought this was supposed to be a policy document.
Yeah.
And the policy document to me is a 1 maximum 2-pager, and it basically has to come from up top that for the mayor and the council to the city administrator and all the department heads and other decision-making staff that we are going to do a policy of purchasing and operating our government so that we are doing everything we can to meet these energy goals that you spelled out. And they are huge. I like the idea of the training. I feel like this could almost be a white paper rather than a plan. When somebody says we're writing another plan, I see it as a big binder going on a shelf somewhere and nobody using it or looking at it. And I think the implementation of the policy is what we're really trying to get at here. And there's a lot of great ideas that have been spelled out here. And I'm sure by just glancing over this one, and I noticed when I got back on and downloaded it, it's been updated in our packet. But this afternoon, I was not looking at this cleaner one. I think that we could use some real help in preparing this document. Now, I was asking about you, Laura, and I understand that but I know you're doing your courses and you've got to write curricula and you're doing everything. We need somebody that can grasp a hold of this and take the ideas and come up with the plan, but make it more of training modules that the city staff we would go to and sit down and really look at, okay, these are our goals. We have to do this. The mayor and the council are demanding it, requiring it, and the city administrator is saying to all the department heads, let's implement it. And I think the how-to is what your guts are. And yeah, this is what, I think it's important that this gets spelled out. Now, do we write another plan that's prescriptive? In other words, telling everybody, there was so many things in here, it almost felt like, this is how I sharpen my pencil. I take it out of a box and I put it in the pencil holder and I sharpen it. I think people get the how-to if they're told they have to. And I think it's going to require training and get everybody on board. And I would like to see some of our budget. I don't know if we got any way of helping this year, but I forget if it was, I think it was Kevin that mentioned in the comments at the start that he's got a student on campus who's really tracking with us on the 350 Middleton plan. We need somebody who understands the big picture to help us. And I think it's got to be somebody like Laura with the skills of writing and maybe the time, and use some of our budget to contract to get this training document together. So you can decide to write a plan. And the one I looked at today was about 15 pages. And I got lost. I just couldn't digest it in the amount of time that I had.
Yeah,
So
Dick, it actually is the same document. I think here are all the things. So I think your comments are well heard. Definitely, we all agree it's too long. You know, it needs condensing and succinctness, but you know, we kind of knew that going in. So next up is Alder Schaefer. But Dean, I don't know between the two of you, Dean, do you have any clarifications you want to make, or should we let Alder Schaefer go
Just
first?
the clarification is that the sustainable purchasing policy has already been unanimously approved by the council. The policy is done. We don't need to write another policy. We actually are trying to write implementation planning.
I did like what I
Because-
heard. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I did like what I heard earlier that was, you know, we get maybe Laura's time right now is super valuable. Dean, you've offered us your more time right now, which is fabulous. I like the idea that I heard earlier of let's set maybe a time frame so that we're diligent. We 2 hours, we all get in a room and we just hammer this out. You know, that might be the way to go next. Okay. Alder Schaefer, I'm gonna let you go next.
Yeah, thank you. I've been enjoying this commentary a lot. I dug into this document coming totally blind without any awareness of any of this thing. And I started reading and pretty soon was completely mired down and not quite clear what it was and where it was going. Was it proscriptive? Was it prescriptive? Was it a policy? Was it a manual, etc.? And got very, very confused like others. I think there's great information in here, but I would also like to see this codified in such a way. I think I like Laura's comments that, you know, you start out simply and say, here again, if there's a policy, here's the policy, reiterate the policy, and this is the value of the policy. Now, in terms of implementing that policy, we need to move down into various subcategories of this document that push through and show you how to go about that and the training and all those things. But it wasn't clear to me from the beginning of reading it that this was a simple, clear policy with 5 great simple statements that this is what this is all about. Everything that follows should be, you know, a solidification of these ideas. I think at times also just in general, it's a little too prescriptive. I went down, I was talking on page 24 and 25, where we're talking about making vendors come up with 2 or 3 different policies as, you know, documentation as to why they're a good vendor. We should be in the business of encouraging anybody to be a vendor of these kind of materials. And when you throw this at a private business, none of them are going to really sit there and fall apart. And all you're going to do is keep people from not bidding on these things. So I think we ought to focus more on the push of the policy and things that our staff ought to be doing when looking at the policies, and not turning around and putting the onus on the businesses and everything else to come up with justification as to why we should think they're a good. But I agree. I mean, I can be involved in helping rewrite some of this too. But I found it confusing and muddling because it was way too much of 3 or 4 different documents all put together in the same thing, all kind of mushed together. And I think that all of you have the brilliance and smart as you put this together. It's fabulous. What you need is somebody who hasn't been swimming through the middle of it to sit back and look at the picture of what's going on. So
Thank you. To Dean's credit, I really want to credit him for what he said earlier, and those are great comments. And thank you for offering to, work on this going forward, or, provide input. To Dean's credit, what he said, he didn't cut like I had wanted done, because he was trying to be respectful of, he didn't know where some of these things came from. And, if it was someone important that this was their thing, he wasn't just going to cut it out. And, he really didn't have time to do that. So, Dean, I just want,
I do think Alder Schaefer, I think what you said was exactly what I was trying to say in the first paragraph. We already have the who, what, when. We don't have the how to. This is a how to manual.
Yeah.
Now, we have a fair amount of evidence at this point. And what you may be saying is this isn't a way to go about behavioral change, which as a psychiatrist, I would say is true. But as a longtime bureaucrat, I guess I'd also say sometimes this happens. There are motions in the right direction towards becoming more sustainable minded. But we're not moving very quickly. Okay. And so the effort at being prescriptive was on purpose. If you think that's the wrong thing to do, then we do need to come up though with and it's something Bob Owen actually mentioned, a way of giving each department feedback about how much progress they could have made and how much they made. Gee, they're available X number of fully electric options or alternative fuel options, and you got 2 ICE pieces of equipment and and 1 hybrid.
Yeah,
You left a lot of carbon in the atmosphere.
Yeah,
somewhere we got to pick up the pace.
Yeah,
either by saying how to do it or how are you doing. So
fair comments. I think Alder Schaefer had really, both of you had excellent comments. And definitely I like where I think what you're capturing here, and then we'll go to Tony actually, because you haven't spoken yet. And then Dick. Alder Schaefer, I think what you're hearing from us is, something we struggle with a little bit sometimes is, the balance between, we all know this, the climate, we want to help find solutions to the climate crisis, yet we have to have a balance of meeting people where they are, like you were saying, how is this going to be best? And Laura, how is this going to be, the audiences, the staff, and how do we make it so it's user friendly and easy for them, but at the same time, we all feel this sense of urgency, but at the same time, we can't just, we have to be logical about this and sensible.
I think if I could just clarify with my comments, it's not so much the prescriptive. What I think is you need to value the employee's ability to come up to some of these things on their own with their work. So I think it's good to hold people to a standard and an expectation. I think it falters when you sit there and you start to lay down a document that says, this is what you have to do, and this is how you have to grade it, and slap you on the hand if you don't follow through. And we're going to be sitting there micromanaging and watching over you. I think what's more important is empower them, let them know that there's an absolute expectation, but we don't have to be quite so prescriptive on the to get there. That's all my.
I fully would like to go with that if we can figure out how to both write it and make sure it gets out into the various levels of staff
Yeah.
who have input on this.
Yeah.
On procurement.
Yeah.
Which is a wide variety of levels of staff.
Mhm.
So that we get this out there. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree with you, Alder Schaefer. There were some things in there that were still in there that just hadn't been cut yet that I thought were too in the weeds, prescriptive, in the weeds, whatever, you know, down to like the minute things like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
you know, we have a bigger picture here to look at rather than just one little thing, you know, so, Tony, so great points. Tony.
Thank you. Yeah, I was also really impressed actually with the document, and that it was you know, pulled together, and that so many people had put a huge amount of effort into it. And you know, obviously it's a draft. There's a couple of things I'd like to say about it. One is that we're all talking about the implementation of the implementation plan. In other words, we have to have a document that says in you know, in paragraphs and not just bullet points about, you know, what this implementation really involves. I agree it doesn't have to go down into the minutiae, but I think it does need to be spelled out, especially the first section. And I really agree with Laura's points about separating out you know, different areas. And I have another reason for agreeing with that. Each department is you know, has their own way of doing things, and each department has their own concerns, you know, the things that they are responsible for.
Mhm.
They're not going to, you know, they can pull out the one thing that they need to work on, you know, and by the one thing, I also want to emphasize here, somebody has to set priorities. So somebody has to say, we're not going to do paper products, you know, we're going to do streetlights, or we're going to do the fleet, you know, depending on whatever the responsibilities are in that department. And then they can pull out whatever needs to be pulled out. The final thing I'd say is that obviously we have to empower the staff and we have to trust the staff. But you know, speaking, I guess, for the managers of the staff, there has to be some way that you know, to really implement this, that makes the staff accountable. That there is some kind of qualitative, is hopefully also some quantitative tracking and monitoring and accountability. So we actually know that not only that it's being followed, but we're actually learning from it and, you know, hopefully making it work. Anyway, those are a bunch of comments. I hope they help.
Thank you. Dick, you're next, but then I'm just gonna make a quick comment. So for Alder Schaefer, so there, this document's very broad and covers a lot of things. There has been the feeling from, you know, the Sustainability Committee, that, you know, certain groups or certain people might be dragging their feet on certain things, and that's where some of these comments are coming from. Like the EVs seems like it has been like a multi-year push to kind of make that go. You know, we're making progress, but that's where that comment particularly is coming from.
Yeah.
On that. So
well, you know, I hear that, and I think it's good what I'm hearing. I just was responding to Tony's comment that yes, you need to put a mechanism to make sure that they're following through. But who makes us the geniuses that know the proper mechanism to make it happen? I think I liked your comment, Tony, when you said each area's got their own special things. They know their area better than we do. So we can lay down some samples or examples of metrics they can use to show that they're getting where they need to go. But I just felt the document was a little too much like, we know everything and we're going to tell you what you have to do, and here's the laws and let's prescribe it, and bang, bang, bang. And that was my reaction to the document.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing everything you're saying. I'm not hearing anything bad or anything I really disagree with. I think it's just the structure of the document could be a little more positive looking and a little bit less draconian in its scope.
fair enough. So Dick, I see your hand went down. Are you next, or you want me to go?
No,
You
I'm on.
next.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really like the discussion that we're having, and John, I'm glad you're on the committee. I mean, all that you've contributed just tonight, we're really benefiting from. My only comment is, besides saying I'm liking the tone and where this is going, I'm wondering if it would be helpful. I feel like the city administrator, when we have a new one, relatively new, would be worthwhile to have a small group that are engaged in rewriting this or whatever with Christie, try to meet. Now, I know, Christie, you told me earlier that you were going to meet with the mayor. And I think that's really valuable to get a sense from her how she wants to see us proceed on these goals and policies. And I feel like rather than, yeah, like John's saying, telling them how to do it all the time, all the prescriptive stuff, asking the city administrator and maybe even a couple of department heads in a small meeting that tell them we want to do this and we are trying to put together this implementation plan, and ask them what they feel would be helpful in the style of it. I feel like that would be better than us coming off like experts, like John is saying. If we had a better idea from them what they feel would be most helpful. And I don't know if that's been done yet, but I feel like getting a really good conversation going with a new city administrator. Hey, we want to see this actually implemented, all these policies, and how do you think it's going to work best for all the various departments?
Great. Good suggestion. Stakeholder input internally. I love it. Okay, Laura.
Okay, yeah, I can just kind of build off of that and also clarify. So to let you know where the questions came from, it was requested that we create, and I think it started out life as like a checklist. It's like the staff would like to have a kind of if-then checklist to say, were the questions, do the chemicals I purchased meet at least one of the following, like that type of thing. So that's where that came from. And then it kind of got spread throughout. But to follow up a little bit on what Dick was saying in terms of getting the city admin and department heads involved, I think like a nice way to move forward, if we did kind of have our intro document, just the base part that says this is what we're trying to do, and then we chop this up, questions and all, into the sections, like the different department sections, and then maybe pull those questions, either leave them in as is or pull them out and just have them almost like a checklist, and then ask the department head, say, hey, it's your department head, we were asked to create a checklist, this is what we came up with, because that's how that happened. And then what would be better? How would you like to have this phrase? How would you like this checklist created or put together? That way they could whack all the specific ones. They could say, oh, we like the if then, or oh, we want something else. And then we just put it together in that kind of format. So I do like the idea of having the department heads involved instead of having everybody read everything, which is daunting and a waste of city time. Maybe just look at the section that's related to their department, give us feedback on that, let us clean it up, streamline, put everything together, and then send it out. And so that's kind of my thought on how you might move forward with that.
Great thought. Alder Schaefer.
Yeah, thank you. I like Laura's comments a lot, because I think what this needs is a cleanup and a refinement. And then I also think going to the city people is important. So I strongly support Laura's notion there.
Thank you. Dean.
Yeah, I love the idea of going to the city administrator and the mayor and going down both sides of down the administrative route and the oversight route for this. I can say that the fossil fuel burning aspect of cleaning up our environmental and climate problem in the Middleton city government, that there was no purchasing of any hybrid or electric vehicle from the time of the 81% referendum in 2016 and the unanimous resolution by the council in 2018, by 2022, there's still never been either a hybrid or a alternative fuel or an electric vehicle bought. This what came as a surprise to actually a number of people on the council who actually thought something had happened by that point in time. And so that gives you some idea about where we were at. The group I'm a member of, which is Wisconsin 350, met with the mayors, both the previous mayor and the current mayor, and the previous city administrator and the current city administrator on multiple occasions, looking into this, and found that this may be why things are so prescriptive, that the way people identified new vehicles to buy was to go to Middleton Ford and ask them what they recommended. The way they found new power equipment to buy is they went to International Power and asked them what they thought would be good new equipment. Those two organizations at that point in time were pretty much exclusively ICE promoters. We need to make sure in some way or another, and we can do this with outcome measures, but outcome measures require measurement and are hard. So is prescription, both are hard. But we do need to make sure that those types of behaviors change. I should say that the first city electric vehicle that was purchased was, interestingly enough, a Mach 3 Mustang EV from Ford Motor, which is being used for the delivery of documents to the county courthouse and for people reading meters. But it's the only sedan Ford makes. We need to have a much broader approach to identifying the options that are out there. And some way we need to get that into this, either the document or the enactment of the document. But it must not stay the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Schaefer.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Dean. I want to be careful about not overgeneralizing, because I think it's much more complex. You know, I chaired parks for 4 years and was on that for 6 years.
Mhm.
We looked at lawnmowers and we actually got 3 competitive bids. And so I think if you make a general statement that somehow the whole city is just doing nothing but going to Ford and stuff, I think you have to look at each individual area, and it may be a problem, but it's not universal.
Public Works. Yes,
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah, and that I heard about that. I mean, part of the other problem that you have to lay down here is when we looked at that in parks was budget. You have budgets laid out a year in advance, and when suddenly the new machine comes in and it's 2 to 4 times the cost of the existing machine and what you have is falling apart, that becomes a problem that goes beyond just simply a policy and asking for other people to do it. So I'm just advocating for let's avoid trying to just sort of generalize and one size fits all on this thing. I think it's I think this back to the idea of each department's doing something different, and each department needs to look and react. And if we be too prescriptive as one way to do it, I think we miss the fact that each department needs to be admonished and dealt with on their terms.
I agree. One of the hard parts of doing the outcomes measurement is that some departments have, very little impact on the overall carbon emissions of the city. Some have huge impact. So we do also need to be much more concerned about those with huge than with small. And
I agree completely. I agree completely.
figuring out how to do that is also going to be important.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Very, very helpful. So, what would, I think we're at, what are next steps, for this? And so I may actually go back and rewatch this part of the discussion after the video comes out, just so I can take more notes and, sort of internalize some additional points of the discussion. But it seems to me, am I hearing, and, oh, Laura, go for it.
I just had a quick question. I was typing it up in the chat, and it's a procedural question that goes to next steps. You know, I know there are rules to follow. So are we allowed to send just parts of a policy to certain people, or do we have to send everything? Like, I'm thinking last, meeting, we had the whole comp plan, and then we had something from Mark, I think, about city planning, and the package was like 200 pages long, and you had to kind of dig through to get to it, which was a pain. So if we just want this department to look at this little thing procedurally, is it okay to just send them that little thing, as opposed to send them the whole thing and say, oh, just find your part?
That would be, I mean,
I don't know what the rules
can answer
are.
that, but I don't know for sure. That would be a Kelly and Alder Schaefer question, probably.
Yeah, I think you can, because this is a work in progress. This is not a finished policy by any means. And even when it's finished in this committee, it's not finished till it goes through the council and gets approved. So in the process of working through, you're collecting data in a sense. By sharing this, you're not saying this is a finished document, tell us if you like it. You're basically saying, read this through and add data, give us input. And I think we should feel free and comfortable to do that. Just don't hide anything. If the question comes up and the things are there, we have the whole document. But at some point, the whole thing becomes the document, and it's important to share it. But I think when you're collecting data, you can do pretty much anything you want with it.
We could offer, Laura, in that line, what Alder Schaefer said, we could offer to provide the rest if they want it.
That's right.
Yeah.
I just think it would be less daunting for everybody if they got, like a 2-page document instead of a 25-page document, and told them to just look at their 2 pages.
Fully agree. That last packet was a monster. Yes. Tony.
Yeah, I just wondered about I was thinking about what would be in that if it were 2 pages. And so what I was wondering was, do we all agree that the 5 steps that were laid out in the first portion are the essential sort of core of this plan? Whatever we send out that may be tailored to a particular department, we have to tell them, this is the framework. How does this look to you? What boxes would you check, and so on. But I think we need, and I think that's the idea of this document, is that there is a framework. And I just wondered if there's some agreement about what is the essential piece of this that we would send out.
Laura?
I think that goes back to the next step. Like, the first part, it's kind of in theory, I think we all kind of, or I shouldn't assume that, but agree on kind of the gist of it. But if you're thinking about next steps, if like me and Dean and, Christy and, get together, chop it apart, maybe that's what we do, is just polish up that part, get that set that, the committee can kind of agree on that kind of written as is, and then go forward with the little, like you said, procedural stuff after that. Because I didn't go through that in the weeds, shall we say. I didn't go in saying, all right, we need to cut this, we need to do that, we need to organize this. I have some ideas, but I figured we needed to get the bigger scope first. It's like, all right, how are we going to put this thing together? Then once we decide how it's put together, let's chop it down. Let's go piece by piece. manageable size.
Okay, Dick, you're up next, but I'm going to jump to Kelly really quick. Kelly, question regarding, I might have missed it. If I overlooked it in the packet, let me know, but you had talked about the budget request sheet that will likely be instrumental in, the execution of this as well. Can you talk to that a little bit? And was that in the packet? I don't think so. And that's okay if it wasn't, but do you want to just speak to that for a minute?
The budget sheet is a one pager that when any department head or staff submits budget requests for the year during the budget cycle, they have to fill out that budget request form. And Alder Hanairo had gone in after conversations that we've had about this topic and edited that somewhat so that it became more standardized for departments to list the non-fossil fuel alternatives for equipment and fleet and other things like that. And they're then prompted to give council those options. So it may say something like Ford Mach-E, 70,000, Chevy Bolt, 29,000, an ICE vehicle, that price, all things that would meet the needs of that particular vehicle's use. And then council can see those things and staff can further get into the details of why they think this decision is better than this, some justifications for it, using the Falca tool to back up life cycle cost analyses. And then council then can make the final decision. But the budget sheet is even though it's a one pager, I think it's a pretty powerful form because there's policies, there's plans, you read them, you have ways you're doing things. But when it comes down to it with staff capacity, I feel like when you actually go to the day that you write out your budget request, you're writing it on that budget sheet. So what it's requiring of you, and then eventually what this plan will require of you is to provide the options to the city with the type of information that the plans that you're producing requires of staff. And ultimately, it's the council's decision for budget and those decisions. The staff lays out their ideas. So I do think the budget sheet's important. And Hanairo has edited that and we're using that now, but it could further be edited or tweaked in the future.
Oh, so that's being used now already.
Yeah, I know that Kylie in the Parks Department, I hear her saying this when I'm at my desk. She's telling her staff, we need to have the alternatives. We need to provide options of non-fossil fuel equipment and vehicles on our budget requests. I've heard her say that probably 10 times just in the office sitting there. So this is trickling down to staff that this is the way we're doing things. And I think hopefully this implementation plan will further clarify that in a simple way. But I do think that this implementation piece will get further sussed out and edited once it gets into the hands of staff. And the department heads will take this to their own employees who often have more expertise in really niche things in that department than maybe even the department head has. So I do think the process is beginning, and I would just encourage you to also trust the process. I know you have to get it to a certain point, and I agree with, I really have loved this conversation. So it's all positive in my mind.
Yeah. Would you mind after the meeting, maybe just sharing that? I'm a visual person myself, so would you mind just sharing that with the committee and then the subgroup can take it? Dick.
Yeah, I just had a quick comment. I don't know if it was Dean who made the point about, do we accept the 5, or maybe it was Tony, do we accept the 5 steps? And I just would not want to recommend that tonight or vote on it. I want to see this newer tailored down document before I approve anything. And those 5 points, those 5 steps felt prescriptive to me when I first went through them, but I haven't looked at them since. And so I don't want to recommend any particular thing now. I just want to have the subgroup take all these comments and try to come up with something new. I think that would be the best way to go.
Okay. Dean, do you have another comment?
Yeah, just to say, I stammered before I hit the raise my hand. but I think the steps can be made very, very short and to the point. Basically, the steps that people take making decisions in a department. The department head and the person most involved in the process, whatever the process is, talk a little bit about it. What do you think we need to do this year? Okay, why don't you go out, put some ideas together, put some thoughts on paper, get this, and this about what we think we're going to do, come back. And that it could be a phone call for all I care, as long as there's or an email, or we didn't say how to do this. Then you say, yeah, that sounds good. Why don't we look a lot more at this one, and this one, and get back to me with the final data. And then we'll put forward on the budget sheet what alternatives we considered and why we think the one we're putting on the in the blank, it says this is the one we want. Why we want that one.
Okay.
And why, I think we can make those 5 points very, very simple. But the other part of it, and figure out how to do this, is to make sure that a wide range of possibilities was considered. And the range is getting wider faster than we think for many, many products,
which is
and-
great. I don't mean to
which
cut
is-
you off, but I might sort of wind this part down a little bit. Thank you. So what I'm hearing is that we have potentially a 4-member subgroup, which is great. Laura, you're the one particularly crunched on time right now with a new intense job. Do you feel like you could take like we can schedule, do you think you could take 2 hours and we just really 2 to 3 and we just get in a room and we just move through this and we have to have a result in that meeting? What do you think?
Yeah, I can work that out. So what would be nice is if maybe Dean could chop it apart so that we have his first, 5 steps as part of it. And then some of the stuff, so we have these separate, we start the beginning of, we got appendix 1, appendix 2. So we chop it up and then we meet and if you could send me that, then I can review the steps 1 through 5, because to Tony's point and Dick's point, let's get that set, that we all agree on steps 1 through 5. Let's get that done, knock it out, send it to people to review, and then we can move forward. So yes, I will email me. We'll figure out a good time to meet. We'll make it happen.
Okay. I just like to say, I'm going to jump in. I heard John say that he would be willing to work on this, and I felt he contributed a lot tonight. And being on the council, having been ahead of Parks, I did not know that. I feel like he would be useful to be in this process that you're talking about if you can work it out.
You're on my list, Alder Schaefer. So I have Dean, Laura, Christy, Alder Schaefer for the 4.
Yeah, I'd be glad to sit in on this thing. I mean, I've directed enough graduate student papers to know what you need to put in that first paragraph to make it go.
Yeah. Okay.
And cutting that arrow drawing a line through this thing so you can follow it and not be bouncing around on the sides.
Yeah, nice. Okay. So then Laura, you were suggesting, Dean and Laura, you can work on the breaking up the 5 points like Laura's suggesting, like that.
Mhm.
Okay, Perfect. All right. So we have a plan with that and the 4-person subgroup, and then we will figure out a time with us. I don't know if this is technically allowed, but this is just an idea. Since we have budget, we could do, if we'll see when the meeting happens, we could do like a working lunch, and we can provide lunch maybe or something. I don't know if that's allowed, but we'll see. Dean, do you have something else? You look like
Yeah,
you're.
I'm just wondering what our deadline is.
Oh, well, I mean,
Because the history of these things has been, it's been sliding.
yeah.
And so I think we need a deadline of when we need to get this in.
Well, I mean, I think having a draft for good question. I mean, do we want to have a draft for the entire committee to review by next month's meeting? Or do we want, as our goal, to have a much more manageable pieces to have sent to the staff for input before next meeting? I mean,
Can I make one just logistic
Yeah.
suggestion?
yes.
Would love to be able to have a copy of this document that I can edit,
Oh,
because all I have is what's sitting here on this
oh,
minutes packet.
it's a Google Doc. I can share that with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. And you have it, Dean, too. You can share it too.
Yeah,
Or do you want- I think you should be able, we'll get it.
Let's decide who the who's got the current document now. I guess what happened, I sent it to Kelly last Tuesday afternoon, I believe, thinking that some things would be happening with it before this meeting. And I don't know, Christy, if you got it at that point too. It was a little ways after we three met.
I started it, yeah.
I had done the changes that we had agreed upon at our meeting. And so were there in fact any further edits made? Do I have the last, was what I sent the last thing that you guys are still working on?
Yes.
I think it is, because this thing still has a statement at the end of the first paragraph that I asked you to look at and remove it if you think it was too over the top, which had something to do with good neighbors. Good neighbors could do no less, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that was rather, what would I say?
And just FYI, I'm not looking for a
not helpful.
document. Yeah, I'm not looking for a document to edit. I just want a copy on it so I can do my own cut and paste and see how things lay out.
Yep.
Just
Dean,
to
you
make
have,
Yeah.
you have the last document. I started editing it.
Okay.
And I took
Okay.
my changes away because it was going to be a broader thing. Deb.
Just wondering if maybe the details could be worked out among the four of you versus any more time. It's 10
Yeah.
to 8.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have some other things on the agenda. Is that possible?
Yes. Deb, you've been very good at redirecting in the last many meetings, just trying to wrap things up. And I appreciate that. That's great. Deb is right. Okay. So we will take this offline now with the four of us. And let's move to the operating budget discussion. So Kermit and I met, my screen just changed. I don't know if other people, because did you stop sharing, Kelly? Okay. So anyway, we talked about several things. We have a little bit of budget left this year. Kelly, do you have the exact amount we have left? By chance, if you don't, well, I'll just say we have some budget left for this year, but then we need to start planning. I'd like to plan more proactively on the budget this year. And I know it seems like this committee has sort of had the issue in the past many years of being a little bit more reactive later in the game on the budget, which is the same thing we're encountering this year. And I take responsibility of that because I definitely feel like I should have managed that earlier. But with the monies we have this year, two main things, and tell me if I'm missing anything, Kelly. But the one thing is we talked about having a sustainability committee tour at the Middleton Operations Center. Another group did that. Lisa Hanairo, Alder Hanairo had messaged me about it, and she thought it would be good for our committee to do it, to interact with the staff, get, just sort of put faces to the names, that'll be a good opportunity too, to just get some ideas, talk with them, hear about what they're doing, what they're up to. And then we thought about just, we have budget to provide a lunch with all of us, with the committee and the staff. And that just might be a nice opportunity for engagement, relationship building, idea building. So that's one idea. Then we also have the other idea, if my memory is serving me right, is the communications. We talked about maybe using some, newspaper advertisements, if we can pull together some social media, we could even do paid social media, something to get out the information about the new federal IRA funding, which is humongous. And so if we can bring more of that money, those financial incentives into our community and get, quote, less emissions and greener at the same time, win-win-win. So those are the thoughts for this year. And then next year, it is communication. I think communications should be a bigger part of the budget. Flyer, which, I think was like $800. We have the parade again. Maybe that was $2,500, so we can start to build out the budget for next year too. Dick.
Okay, this is a thought I had while we were listening to all the discussion before about how we're going to meet our energy needs. How much, first of all, I can't see the final total at the bottom, Kelly. How much money do we have left? 4,000, is that right? Or
you have about 5,700. There's been a bill that's come through since this time in early October, but as of 9:30, you had 5,900, so about 5,700 left. Okay.
We were going to hire this summer an intern. I think we agreed $3,500 for that. I don't want people in the city, John, to be looking at our budget and say, well, they didn't spend, 5,000 of it and you got a $10,000 budget, let's cut them back. I would like to suggest that we offer, say, Parks and Recreation or Public Works up to, say, $4,000 and explain to them that because an intern fell through at the last minute, we did not spend this money, and offer them to go out and buy a piece of electric equipment, like a lawnmower or whatever equipment that Parks would need that is meeting our energy goals, and just put the money to good use, not throw it at newspaper ads and other stuff. That to me, it just feels like, well, we got to spend it somehow. How can we do it? Let's buy something or do something with it that actually is working towards our goals. And if Kelly would communicate to the Parks people, hey, we've got this money that we didn't spend, and let them know, so that make sure we don't feel like that we're not spending our money, but that an intern didn't come through and we ended up with more money than we thought. Would you like to spend $4,000 buying a new lawnmower, electric, or getting other equipment? So that's one thought.
Alder Schaefer, I was going to call on you anyway because your history. You're on mute.
Sorry, it's a great idea, but I don't think we have the authority to do that as a committee.
Right.
The money wasn't given for us to make up our own minds as to it. There needs to be a justification. You could go back to the council for a budget and say that this is what we think we would like to do with this. And if they approved it, then it could go through. But I don't think you can work unilaterally across committees and start sharing money back and forth. So
right.
I was just going to say one other comment. I did go on that trip with Lisa to the operations center.
Okay.
So I have some insights and can give you some information about that in the future meetings if you have questions and things.
Did you feel like it was useful use of your time?
It was, one of the things that was very helpful was, of course, the hearing. It always comes down to budgets. Like when looking at why do you always keep going and buying Fords all the time? It's because one of the things is they have to stock parts and they have to have enough people who understand the different machines to cover how to maintain them with the least amount of people with the least amount of money. So there's always a conflict, and that of course leads towards one vendor, let's all buy the same truck, let's get the same parts. And that was one of the big part of the discussions. And so that sometimes run contrary to what we're thinking about in terms of sustainability. But it might be helpful to go hear what they have to say and see how they work. So you can weigh both of those issues side by side as you think about things.
Great, thank you. Laura?
Just listening to Dick's idea, and we'd have to ask the council and stuff. Another thought came up is one of our members, Shreya, is trying to get a biodigester or something at the school, and I don't know if they have. I mean, that would be part of us. That is something that we could maybe support.
I would,
mean, if Dick wants.
sorry, Laura, to interrupt. I would absolutely love that. Shreya, can you jump in? Where's that at?
So we just started applying for a bunch of grants. I talked to the superintendent like 2 weeks ago, and she was definitely saying that she was willing to support whatever we did, and she would like bring it up personally to the school board. But like we need like solid money before we even brought that up, or else they wouldn't like even consider it. So we like with the green team, we started our separate committee, and we started like applying to a bunch of grants. So once those like go in and then we get some money, then I think we can proceed.
Well, this committee might have a grant.
Yeah.
So how much money do you need?
We not like we were just like starting out, so I can get you a number by like the end of this week. We were just like discussing on how we're gonna get started first, like getting our first like couple hundreds, but.
So just for the group, I think most people know this, but Deb, Shreya, Dick, and I went to tour a in-house composter at the Madison College that was really impressive. And so Shreya was there and really heading this up, which is very impressive, Shreya. And so, this has been something in the works for a while. And just for some of the newer members, food waste is one of the biggest contributors of methane, which is terrible, and has a strong 20-year carbon load. And, it doesn't have to be that way. Food waste is something that's easily managed and can be turned into compost, which can then be put on the ground, which helps the trees and the roots and the plants. So really nice circular thing. Laura, were you done with your comments? Because I jumped to Shreya.
That's okay. I mean, my thought was, if we have this money, and as Dick said, we want to do something good that makes a difference, that is reducing, and Shreya has this, we could, part of it would be, that, a grant from the sustainability committee, we would actually get probably a little publicity about that.
I would love that.
Which goes back to, now you're getting some publicity. I mean, so I guess I would be asking, Alder Schaefer, is that legal? Can we purchase something for the high school with our money that's left over?
I'm a little new at this, but I think that the fact is that it can be done, but it still has to go through the fact that you're changing something that was applied for in a budget that was allocated from the council and the budget committee that says this is for an intern, and you now want to change the use of that money. I think what you have to do is go back through those formal process, through that budgeting process. We said we had excess, but we have a great idea of what we would like to do, and we'd like to request being able to carry over that money and include that with some additional funding or something in the next year's cycle or the next budget cycle, or at least you have to go back through that permission. So it's not like you can't do it. You just can't make that decision ourselves as an independent.
Yeah, I want to comment. I'd like to comment on that, please.
Let's do Dick and then Dean.
Yeah, this was $10,000, John. That's our budget. And we never said that we were going to told the council that we're going to spend 3,500 of it. That was an internal decision that we made on how to spend it. So this 10,000, the problem is that it has to be spent by December 31 or it's lost.
But what was it requested when you put in your budget requests on that? What was the 10,000?
That's
our standard operating budget.
Yep, that's our standard budget. Other committees get 5 and we get 10, and we're doing more stuff with it. And we had internally decided back in the spring we were going to hire an intern, and that intern didn't materialize. So
that would change then, probably that. But probably would be worth talking to the city administrator to just see what process to make sure.
Yeah,
So,
well, Kelly, I think, can probably mediate this
Kelly
whole
can.
thing. But my sense is, and how we've spent money in other years, is that we could decide to use this for something like what Laura suggested, and I fully support that. I just raised a question. I mean, I don't know that we could spend the money for the composter, because they wouldn't be buying it by December 31. They haven't really gotten that off the ground, but I certainly like the idea of spending it on something rather than newspaper ads and things like that.
Yeah.
We have a council meeting tomorrow night, and I can check with Brian beforehand and just sort of pose the question a little bit about what, if any, process should be gone through, because I just want to make sure it's a process. Because even if it's your money and you have that effect, you could sit there and say next year, okay, we gave you 10 grand, but we think you spoiled, you misused it. So there goes your next budget. Yes, sir.
So the other thing, just very briefly, is that we're also sending this money to another organization that has taxing powers. And that usually is looked at 2 or 3 or 4 times. I don't know if there's a law against it, but it's unusual. Why didn't they put it in their budget?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a consideration too.
I mean, we bought light bulbs for Voss House because we were trying to help low-income housing save money for its residents. So we spent $500 on light bulbs, and it's all part of our mission to help become more sustainable in the community. And I felt all along, the last number of years I've been on this committee, that we had latitude to do that kind of thing. So I don't feel that this is any different than, it's like a grant, money that we bought stuff for Voss House that we agreed on as a committee was a project we were going to do.
Well, let me just help clarify it. I'll ask the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kelly, would you mind talking, so we got potential, Sustainability Committee directed communications about the Inflation Reduction Act, the new big federal funding. One thing I would love to have Kelly talk on tonight is more of the big picture of our community, trying to help our community forward in a sustainable way. And so Kelly is working very hard and very well on the city aspect. However, there's other aspects like the community, like our houses and, the other things that fall into our community as well. Would you mind talking about that quick, Kelly?
About the IRA and the
No, just about the overall, like about where we are. You're helping the city meet the goal. It was what we went back and forth on email today about, and also you just said there's a huge opportunity for moving the community, greenhouse gas reduction forward too. And that's almost, and we talked about that, kind of touched on it for months, just you and me, in conversation, but there's a lot of work the whole community needs to do beyond just city purchasing cars. There's just a lot of transition. Am I ringing bells about what we were?
Yeah, I mean, the city is a drop in the bucket for Middleton at large on carbon emissions. It's a small part. And so one thing that would be, I think, great if we're interested in really reducing community-wide carbon emissions is to help educate, provide webinars, resources, communications to the public in the business sector over the next year about the opportunities of the funding coming down from the federal government, which is a game changer. It's a market changer. There's so much money available for individuals, businesses, nonprofits, government entities to make purchases that reduce carbon emissions. And I think that the guidance is somewhat difficult to wade through, and it's still coming out. And I don't think residents yet really understand what's available to them or what businesses, could take advantage of. And so one potential thing to think about for your work plan next year is spending some portion of time doing outreach in the community about, how to reduce carbon emissions on a community basis. I feel like we're getting a decent handle on what the city has left to do, and we sort of understand now the pinch points, the barriers, the success stories, the priorities. We have plans for all those things. And I think it'd be great to do some public outreach on, but how does all of this talk transmit to individual choice, business choice? How can we work together as a community? There's a lot of potential to work on that kind of thing.
Thank you. Deb.
That takes us back to Sustainable You. I think that would be an excellent series, actually, of talks that could be done through that venue. And the Friends of Pheasant Branch, we were going on the odd months, and Sustainable You, this committee was going on the even months. Next year in 2024, the days that we were using were not available. So we're using third Thursday of the month from 6 to 7. And so all of those dates, those even number of months are all available to this committee if you want to use them to reinstate Sustainable You for that purpose.
I think we need, so I love that idea. We had talked about, and this is again, maybe too in the weeds, but we had talked about maybe that an hour-long webinar, people were like, zoomed out kind of thing with those. So I don't know if we wanted to shorten it to, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that, a little quicker. But I think, I like the idea of a combination of approaches. Not everyone, absorbs information in the same way. So if we have the outreach in a variety of formats that appeals to different people and captures a broader group, that's something I would be in favor of. Laura.
Yeah, I would just kind of second both of those comments. I do like the idea of Sustainability U, and we did talk about chopping it down, because to be honest, I don't remember the last time I watched an hour-long TED Talk even. But still, just because you have from 6 to 7, that doesn't mean that you couldn't have a short, 15-minute presentation and 15-minute Q&A or something. Something I might be able to do with my class, and this would be actually later in the spring though, so I wouldn't be able to get it really up and running until the summer. But one of the things I have them looking at is, design some stuff, and I can have them design communication materials. They can make TikToks, they can make videos, they could do different stuff. And so I will have some students to work on that. I might be able to have them work on it a little bit this semester, get some ideas out there, so I could at least float that. And I could talk more to Deb about, I saw one of the Sustainability U's, but that's just an idea. I like your idea of chopping it down, but reimagining Sustainability U, I guess, is what I would say.
That's great. Yep, Deb.
Don't forget, we're back to face-to-face. I mean, when Sustainable U happened, it was done on webinars and stuff because of COVID, but we're doing face-to-face now, and the public comes in, and certainly part of that time is not all talking, it's question and answer for the crowd, because that IRA is huge. I mean, I don't know how you talk about that in 15 minutes.
Great point, Deb. Well taken. Thank you. Kelly.
We have some funding through the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition to have Slipstream help us with community-wide IRA help to explain it. And I was thinking, I don't think tonight's the night to do a brainstorm session, but we do have a new communications director who really knows how to do this kind of community stuff. And maybe we should meet with him in the near future and talk about some outside the box ideas like, what if you did it by neighborhood association or by neighborhoods and had a potluck in someone's house, not because you're going to get 40 people, but because you might get 5 to 10 really engaged community ambassadors from that neighborhood who know everyone else. And just thinking about how to be really strategic. I think Brent, our communications director, could help with some of that kind of strategic thinking on communications for next year. And then lastly, for this year, there is a question I have about budget that I just wanted to ask before time goes, is that there is the Sustained Dane Conference, which every year we've offered registrations for committee members to go to. And if you would like to go to that conference, we could use the Sustainability Committee budget, which we have done for years and years, to go to that conference, and I can register you. And then there's another, $300 for the lead plaque, which I would like to get for City Hall. So there's a few items that we could spend that I think would take about another 1,000 of that money.
Great. Yes, and yes on the funding through Slipstream and meeting with the communication person in the near future. Fabulous idea. And I love the idea of neighborhoods, actually. I mean, we don't need a ton of people just that start talking and spreading the word. I think that is such a good idea. With the Sustainable You, the face-to-face, I'll just quickly say that, I've learned that in terms of just the US economy, we're going through this shift right now where there's a lot of older people who it doesn't mean if they're retired or not. I'm saying older, meaning not people in there that are 20. But the people who are inheriting money after parents pass off, there's a huge transfer of wealth right now. And these are the people who can just afford to write checks for $15,000 for a new, HVAC system in their house, things like that. So that is definitely happening now, that opportunity with these tax credits. So I love it. I think we have some good plans. Laura said, okay, the Sustained Dane. So, and then Kelly, do you want us to vote on the three? I think everyone would be fine. I'm assuming everyone would be fine with Kelly spending $300 on a lead plaque for the city council. Anyone opposed to that? I'm making my own, I guess I'm not making my own motion and question, but do we need to vote on that, or is that just, I think that's okay if you just do that. I mean, you and I have talked about it. I said fine, but what do we need to do? Anything for that?
Go for it.
Yeah.
The small
Okay.
bananas, just go for it. It's
yeah.
bigger stuff that we might want to vote on, but these kind of things, we do this every year. We've all approved it in the past, unless somebody strongly objects, then just go for it. We don't need a motion.
Absolutely agree. Okay. So Treya, do you have any other green team updates for us?
Other than the compost service we already talked about, this month we didn't have a lot of action. We had there was homecomings, we had a lot of post-homecoming cleanup sessions and then parking lot cleanups. And then we started the Trex recycling competition again in the school, and that's the basic update.
That's great. I saw the pictures on Instagram, I believe.
Yes.
So that's good. Okay. Action items for 2024 events that ties into the budget discussion too. That's on the agenda. So I think it just comes down to, how about if I provide, and people can feel free to email me or provide input on if you have budget ideas for next year. We are all ears, both Kermit and I, who's the vice chair. So I think maybe we'll do this again next month to talk about more specifics, given this 8/17. What else am I missing here? Other work initiative updates on things? Does anyone have any proposed agenda items for next month? Maybe, knock on wood, we can end early tonight before 8:30. What do we think? I think we had some good, robust discussions tonight. Thank you, everyone. So helpful for your, becoming prepared, reviewing, really fruitful and respectful feedback.
I think it's really important for us to spend the rest of our money somehow. If Kelly says she can probably spend $1,000, that puts us, at least we could earmark 4,000 for something. If not 5. And
Alder Schaefer, were you gonna check, was one of your questions gonna be whether we can roll over some of our money?
Yeah, I'll check with Brian, but as to who we would talk to find out what we can and can't do to make sure that when we do it correctly.
Okay.
I'll check tomorrow night with Brian, and I'll Christie, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Thank you. Deb, thank you very much. Deb, you're up.
Gotta unmute. We did change all the dates, et cetera, update the Sustainable Middleton Awards online application. And it's going to go live on December 1st. And it would be helpful if you'd start talking it up. We didn't have any individuals from the city of Middleton apply last year. So it'd be great to have citizens actually take part in all of this. If you've got ways to get the word out, let us know. But we're hoping for even more people applying for Sustainable Middleton Awards this coming year.
Okay. You said the application opens December 1st, you said?
It goes live December 1st and
December
it closes on the 31st of January.
Okay, so.
It's for this year, 2020.
Yeah, okay. And so we'll get the link will go out to the committee, hopefully, before, on the 1st or something, or before, or.
Well, that's a good question. How, last year we put an item in the Middleton Times, but not a lot of people get the Middleton Times.
No. No.
And maybe the city administrator could send out email blast to the community, like we've gotten about different things going on in the city, and say, you know, we'll have a little blurb and it can go out and tell everybody. We had the Chamber of Commerce last year announce it at their business meeting, which would be good to do that in November so that they're, you know, ready to go December 1st, that it would be live.
Kelly, maybe we can wrap this into the communications person discussion, do you think? Okay. Be great. Okay. Helpful, thank you. So 9 minutes, gosh, we could really do this. Do we have, I think we've covered everything. Thank you, everyone. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Dick, Dean, not sure. I think Dick was like 0.01 seconds first. So, you know, Dick and Dean, you second. All in favor?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Aye. Okay, adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have great nights.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to
Thank
meet you all and
Thanks.
be glad to be working with you. So
Thank you. Likewise.
Okay.
Feelings
Thank you.
mutual.
Mm.
Okay.